Hello and welcome to today's webinar on building a business case for better conversational AI. My name's Kerry Robinson. I'm VP of Conversational AI at Waterfield Technologies. And at Waterfield, we essentially help you deliver amazing customer experience through a combination of human agents, bots, and the platforms that support them. We help you with customer service strategy. What should your human agents do? What should bots do? What channels should they operate on? We help with workforce optimization. How can platforms enable human agents to be the best that they can be? And then we've got conversational AI, helping bots to be the best they can be. Sometimes I like to think of this as bot workforce optimization. In this session, we're going to be focusing on conversational AI, and particularly how do we build a business case to deliver better conversational AI. We're going to cover these four areas. Firstly, business metrics. Essentially, what do you value? Then we're going to talk about how to identify opportunities and the impact that they could deliver. What's it worth? And then we're going to look at the business case. What's the return on investment? And finally, we're going to talk about how to maximize your return on investment through the bot management system. First, let's talk about business metrics. What do you value? I think there are three main areas to consider here. You've got customer experience and brand impression. You've got the finance side of things, so lower cost, more revenue, better profits. And then you've got operations. So how do you make change rapidly, respond, and get insights that will drive your strategy? Let's focus on customer experience first. And a few stats here that I think really set the scene. We see that the Microsoft report said that 96% of customers say customer service is important in their choice of loyalty to a brand. And then the Temkin Group say that loyal customers are 5 times more likely to purchase again and 4 times more likely to refer a friend. And then finally, client-centric companies are 60% more profitable compared to companies not focused on the customer, according to Deloitte and Touche. Now, there's all sorts of stats that you could bring up, but I think zooming out can be quite helpful. And we can see that the 10-year return on companies that are leading in terms of customer experience, that's the red line here, compared to the general companies in the Standard & Poor's 500 index in the US, the difference is stark. The 10-year return on investments in customers that lead in customer experience is way above the 10-year return on an S&P 500 up to 2014. And if we zoom into the last major recession, we can see that there's some really interesting things going on here. In the light blue, we've got the customer experience leaders. In the dark blue, the laggards. And this is based on Forrester's index. And what we saw is that in 2007, the CXP leaders were well ahead. In 2008, as the recession really began to bite, everyone's behind, but the laggards, they're down nearly 50%, whereas the leaders, just a third. And then I think what's really critical, especially in the context of our current situation, is that as we moved into 2009 and started exiting the recession, it was the customer experience leaders that really made hay and pulled way ahead of the S&P 500 index and particularly the laggards. So it's clear that customer experience impacts finances, but it's really hard to attribute the impact of any particular intervention, any particular project, any particular customer experience improvement on finances. We know it's there because we can see it at the high level, but it's really hard to attribute each individual one. And I think this is important when we think about building a business case for conversational AI. It means that we need to focus on the emotional case. We're all human beings, we're emotional beings. We care about things like freedom and speed and the ability to make changes. We can focus on those, why is it a good thing to do? Why wouldn't we deliver a great customer experience if we could do? And of course, there's personal recognition. Everyone wants to get recognition for the good work we do, for the good experiences that we create. But that's not enough to build a business case. We need to focus on the financial side too, which comes down to more revenues, lower costs, which are delivering more profit. So we mustn't forget the emotional. We should build on the emotional case, but we've got to ground it in a financial case that's based on directly measurable and attributable financial benefits that are based on real data. And when we're looking at the financial side of things, it really comes down to profit. That's what drives businesses. And profit is improved when we increase revenue through collecting more payments from our customers, retaining customers, converting opportunities or new prospects into customers, and upselling existing customers. And of course, the cost side of the equation is important here. Reductions in the number of contacts that agents have and the handling time for those contacts reduces costs. So does a reduction in unnecessary internal transfers. And then we've got the cost for simply operating the system and dealing with downtime when we lose the benefits. Now, in this presentation, I'm going to be focusing on the cost side because the revenue side is very, very dependent on particular industries. But the cost side is pretty universal. So, how do we identify opportunities and the impact of them? Essentially, what's this worth? Well, before we go in, I think it's important to have a quick word about containment. This is often used as the metric across all of IVR chatbot deployments as the kind of the gold standard performance, and it's essentially defined as the total number of contacts that don't reach a live agent divided by the total number of contacts received. It's super, super simple, but the problem is it confounds two very, very different types of customer journey. You've got positive containment where someone calls up, maybe they hear their balance, got all the information they need, and they hang up happy. That is what we're looking for. That's great. That contributes to containment. But there's also negative containment, where the system repeatedly doesn't understand, or we've got failures in back-end lookups or other issues that essentially cause the customer to hang up or walk away from the chat session dissatisfied. That's negative containment, but it contributes to the same number. And so we've got to move beyond containment. We've got to take a customer journey approach to analysing the benefits of conversational AI. And there's 4 steps to doing this. First, we've got to identify the candidates for automation. Then we've got to estimate the number of each customer journey through those automation opportunities. Next, we're going to forecast the financial impact of each of those journeys, and then we're going to prioritise. So let's start with step 1, identifying candidates for automation. I think a great way to do this is set out in the book, The Best Service is No Service, where they introduce the concept of a value irritant matrix. So essentially, along the horizontal axis, we have things on the left that are irritable to the customer, and on the right, things that are valuable to the customer. And the vertical axis, at the bottom, we've got things that are an irritant for the business, and at the top, things that are valuable to the business. And then what we can do is we can take each of the contact types that we have in our contact center, and we can plot them on this 4x4 grid. And when we do that, we can think about how to deal with each quadrant. Things that are at the bottom left, they're a customer irritant, they're a business irritant. We just need to get rid of those. Fix the processes, get rid of them. Top left, things that are valuable to the business but irritable to the customer, let's just simplify it, make it so effortless that the customer really doesn't mind. And in the top right, we've got leverage. These are things that are high value to the business and high value to the customer. We want agents spending time interacting with customers on these type of contacts. They're really valuable. We don't want to reduce this kind of contact. And at the bottom right, we've got automate. This is for things that are an irritant to the business, but they have high customer value. Customers need or want to do them. And this is the area where we really see the opportunity for conversational AI. But we need to figure out the size of these automation opportunities. And that's where we do the candidates for automation calculation. So what we need to do is take the data you have from your contact center reporting and take all the opportunities that you identified through the value irritant matrix and put it into a grid. And at the top of that grid, you can have the volume of each of the contact types that you receive in your contact center. And then what we want to do is we want to allocate those contacts to the different use cases, the different automation opportunities that we've identified and listed down on the left. Now, something to remember is that often the same call type, in this case bill balance, can contain contacts that relate to multiple different automation opportunities. So in this instance, we've got a contact type from contact center reporting of bill balance, but we're going to split that across two different use cases. Let's say 90% of those bill balance inquiries will be satisfied with a balance inquiry automation. But there's another 60% that want to go deeper and they need to understand more about their bill. The opposite also happens. So we can find that multiple contact types, as reported by our contact center platform, can relate to the same automation opportunity. For example here, the order status automation opportunity draws 30% of its contact volume from order inquiries, but another 10% that end up in the general inquiries bucket. And once we've done this, we have the volume of contacts that relates to different use cases, different automation opportunities in our conversational AI. And what we want to do now is map those to build a high-level design. So essentially, we've got 300,000 contacts talking about wanting to buy something. We're going to leverage those contacts. We've got 79,000 order status contacts. We've got 130,000 payment contacts, and there's nearly 500,000 others. What we can do now, and this is something that you'll need to involve a bot strategist or a conversation designer to help you with, is building a high-level design. Now, this isn't a call flow. This isn't talking about what prompts are going to be said or all the different states and situations in a design, but it's the high-level information architecture. And here we've got or we've been able to start laying out the different tasks that occur within this conversation AI system. So the first task is intent capture. We need to figure out what it is that the customer is calling or contacting us about. Having understood that, we can then go into the task one for those call types that require it, where we're going to identify and verify a customer, or it might be that just identification's enough. And then we've got our task 2 and task 3, which are our automation tasks for order status and for payment. So now we've got our high-level design, we need to begin estimating the number of each customer journey. How do we do that? Well, just pick an end-to-end customer journey through your high-level design, and then we need to estimate how often that will occur. And to do that, we have to do a little bit of probability. But don't worry, it's not too complicated. It's just like flipping a coin. If we flip a coin once, there's a 50% chance of it coming up tails. Flip it twice, there's 50% times 50%. That's 25% chance of coming up tails. Flip it 3 times, we're at 12.5%. And we're going to do the same thing as we look at each step within the journey that we've just picked. So we started off with 79,000 candidates for the order status automation. And you know, we've got to first capture that's what they want to do. We've got to capture their intent. And that's not perfect. You know, we make mistakes there sometimes. So let's say 90% of those 79,000 contacts, you know, we recognize that really is their intent. Then we need to take them through identification and verification. Let's say we're 96% successful at identifying the customer, maybe by using their telephone number or an account number. But then only 75% successful with verification, which might include a zip code or date of birth. And then we're into the order status task. And let's assume there that 75% of people complete their order status task. But remember, they might have other needs. It might be they have further questions. So not all of them finish there. Some go on to interact with an agent. But let's assume 75% hang up happy or walk away from the chat session happy with the status of their order. So we end up out of that 79,000 candidates for order status automation, we end up with nearly 27,000 who complete the task successfully and don't transfer. That is positive containment. So that's the route we've taken for our first journey. We then need to repeat it for all the other customer journeys. And different things can happen. So we can see here that we've got customers coming through the order status journey and hanging up happy or walking away happy. That's that nearly 27,000 there. There's the other percentage who go through the same path, but then do want to go on and speak to an agent. So we've got 9,000 there. But some drop out earlier. Some drop out at the point of identification and verification, or maybe even just at identification only. The key thing is that all of those have had an interaction, and some of those interactions will be valuable. So next we've got to forecast the financial impact. And to do that, we take each of these journeys and we want to look at what happens there and how valuable is that. So if we take, for example, someone who goes through and identifies and verifies successfully, and then we give them their order status information and they hang up or walk away happy. Perhaps we'll say 45 seconds in the identification verification compared to an agent doing that. And then maybe 90 seconds in providing the order status. So the total benefit there is 27,000 contacts multiplied by the time that we've saved from an agent, 45 plus 90 seconds. But that's not the only benefit. We've got these other routes through that do end up with an agent, but still confer value. So if we do identification and verification, provide order status, but then a customer wants to go through and, cancel or reschedule their delivery, then they're going to spend some time with the agent, but we still save the agent the time to identify and verify them and provide the order status. So we still got some benefits there. Same if we just do identification and verification, and even if we just do ID. But it is really important that we use the systems to pass data from the voice or the chat channel into the agent desktop and have an effective screen pop there to make sure the agent picks up all this data and doesn't need to ask the customer to repeat themselves. Now, what's really interesting here, back to that whole point about containment not being the be-all and end-all, not only does containment conflate positive containment and negative containment, it ignores the value that come from these interactions that are partially automated and then get handed off to an agent. And as we can see here, only 2/3 of the savings here are due to a fully contained contact. There's about 1/3 that come from this partial automation, so it's really important to remember that. So we're saving nearly 91,000 minutes through this order status automation opportunity. What's that worth in dollars and cents or pounds and pence? You don't always need to go there. Sometimes it's just enough to say, look, we've got 91,000 minutes here, we can save or we can reallocate to other areas. But if you do want to go into the dollars and cents or pounds and pence, then essentially you just need to take the number of a particular journey type, multiply it by the time saved in the contact center, and multiply that by the cost per productive agent minute in the contact center. And to get that, you need to use the agent's salary, the amount of time they work per year, per day, their utilization rate, because they're not always on the phone or always on chats, and don't forget the overhead rate. Because beyond the salary, we've got tax, we've got paid holidays, we've got recruitment, training, retention. We've got all the infrastructure, the IT infrastructure that every agent requires. So make sure that's all loaded in. So finally, we get to prioritize, because we found lots of opportunities, but which one should we focus on? So firstly, you need to do some filtering and categorization here. Filter based on customer journey constraints. You can't do order status until you've built the IDMV capability. Think about technical constraints too. You can't do order status without an API to get data from. And then think about the financial benefit. You filter out the low impact opportunities. It costs time, money, and energy to build conversational AI capability, to build new use cases into your bots, and so you want to focus on those with high impact. Then, there's lots of ways you can do this, but I think it helps to categorize the opportunities based on the effort, the internal and the external cost to deliver, and the impact, both financial and non-financial benefits. And then we can group these into quick wins and subsequent phases. So here's an example of doing that, where we're using this quadrant approach again, looking at impact, whether that's low, medium, or high, and looking at effort, again, low, medium, and high, and plotting each of these opportunities into this quadrant. And we've also sized them according to the financial benefit here as well, to give a little bit more of a visual cue. And so we can use this to pick out the quick wins. That's what we want to put into our phase 0, that bottom right hand corner there. And then we've got the high impact projects that we can do in the top right there, and that we can put into our subsequent phases. And then we've got those fill in jobs, which is nice to have, but they haven't got huge impact, but neither are they high effort. So we can fill those in as part of or in between our quick wins and our larger projects. So we understand the benefit, but a business case is more than just benefit. It's what's the return on investment, because it's not cost-free to build this capability. I think, this is a big subject, but I think what I want to just focus in on here is just remember there's a time lag here. We've got 3 phases. We've got the project delivery, where we're incurring the costs of building the solution, but we're not getting any benefit from it yet. Let's say that takes 4 months or so. Then we've got a project payback period, during which we're starting to get the benefits coming through. Now, don't assume you're going to get all the benefits on day one. It will take time to build, to roll out, to tweak and enhance things. We'll talk about that later, to get to your full benefit. But then once you've got your full benefit, and that's run for long enough, then you get to the investment return point. And the pivot point there is when your cumulative profit and loss, so all you've invested into the project minus the benefits you've got, when that crosses 0. That's your point when you're starting to get a return on investment, and the benefit you'll get every month from there is your run rate benefit. Something to bear in mind when you're building a business case is the timing. So with smaller high impact projects, it may be that the project delivery period is short enough, the cost to deliver is low enough, that your time to get payback is only a few months, and therefore you can potentially deliver this kind of benefit within a fiscal year, and therefore you don't even need to get capital funding. You can potentially fund it out of operational expenditure. So it's worth considering, when the fiscal periods are, and whether you've got a project that you need CapEx investment for, or whether actually you can deliver it within the operational expenditure envelope. So then just a few pro tips on what you want to think about when you're building the business case. Firstly, get on the same side of the table as your key stakeholders. You don't want to be pitching this to them like it's a grand idea. You want to be working on it with them on their side of the table. They need to input into the assumptions, into figuring out where we should automate. Their team should be involved, such that when you're sharing the outcome of your business case, everyone's aligned. Make the assumptions really clear. There's plenty of assumptions to go in here. Make it really clear what they are, so you can tie it back with to your stakeholders and to their delegates that, we didn't just make up these assumptions, that they're based on data that you feel comfortable with. And that's the point. Make sure you're using data to derive any assumption that you can, and use a range. So data and the assumptions we make, will never be entirely correct. So consider the impact of a lower than expected and a higher than expected value for each of your assumptions, whether that's volumes, that's completion rates, that's cost even. And then look at the sensitivity of moving between low, medium and high assumptions in various different areas. So you can get a feel for the sensitivity of your business case to the different assumptions you've made, and therefore get a feel for what are the range of potential outcomes. So you're not saying, we will hit this ROI. You're saying that there's a range of ROI expectations between, let's say 3 months and 9 month payback, between $100,000 and $300,000 a month savings. And finally, I want to talk about building momentum. This is all about how you measure the impact of the projects you deliver and use that to build confidence, drive momentum, and inform your next steps. And this is what we call a bot management system. So it's a cycle that starts at the bottom with analytics. What information have we got about the interaction our bots are having, the contacts into our contact center. This drives into bot strategy, and building a business case is a big part of your bot strategy. So that's really what we've been focusing on today. And then that sets the scene. It creates the plan for delivering IVR and chatbots. And to do that, we need to create great conversation designs. Don't have time to go into that today, but that is a thing. You can't just hand over your vision to a developer and expect it to get built brilliantly. You need conversation design, then you need to implement, then customers interact with it, and then you get new data. And the great thing about that is when you get new data, that can validate what you set out to achieve. Hooray, we've got the ROI we expected. It can also point to issues. We didn't get quite what we expected, but then it'll tell you why, because you'll see, that assumption, we're not getting 75% completion on order status, we're actually getting 63%. And then you can dive in, so why is that? We need to change the design or do some tuning there, or get some better data via the API. Maybe the API hasn't got good data, or it's failing too often. So it really allows that bot analytics to then drive back into strategy. So what are you going to do next? And by having this bot management approach and starting with a business case, magic happens, because now every decision you take can be tied back to the business case. So there's a delay on an API. Well, what impact is that going to have on the cost here? Is it worth waiting for that API? Because otherwise we're not going to get any of the benefit from rolling this out. Or, what about a design decision? Maybe a legal requirement to add a step of verification. Well, let's look at what's the impact going to be if we add that extra step and we have to flip another coin and less people get through. Let compliance, let the wider business, let the stakeholders understand the impacts of all of the decision points and findings that occur throughout the journey of delivering a project, but the program of continuously optimizing it too. So a few final pro tips before you launch. Design and build task-based reporting to make sure that the kind of tasks that we've talked about, the candidates for automation that deliver results, that you can track how many people are trying them, completing them and being successful. As I said, manage the impact of decisions throughout delivery. So design decisions, technical decisions, data quality. Consider this all the way through and tie it back to your business case so you can understand the impact. And then, you won't get everything done. Keep a backlog of opportunities, things that you haven't done that you can return to in subsequent iterations. And critically, once you've launched, calculate the financial impact of your deployment and compare it with the forecast. And then using that bot management system, we can go back to the first step here of identifying new candidates for automation, new opportunities, updating our high-level design, our assumptions, reforecasting the likely impact, and using that to drive the next stage. So just to summarize, we really focus on financials here, but you've got to build the emotional case. Build the emotional case based on, this is a good thing to do. We want a better customer experience. There's evidence that it drives long-term financial benefits. And I know it's tough to really connect those benefits with the interventions, but this is the right thing to do, and we're going to feel good about this, and our customers are going to be happier. And so build that emotional case. But that's not enough. You've got to ground it in the financials. So forecast the impact of each customer journey, prioritize what you're going to deliver based on a customer experience, a technical and a financial lens, model the project P&L, as we showed, to forecast when your return on investment will come, build the reporting in from the beginning, and model the impact of decisions you take, understand how's that going to affect the business case that you came up with, and then when you deploy, go back and calculate and compare what you forecast versus what actually happened. And of course, celebrate your wins, which could be we saved money, we made money, we improved profits, we got an ROI. But sometimes your win is just knowledge. That didn't work the way we thought it would. That's not quite as successful a task as we thought. We need to go and work on it. Or maybe look for benefit elsewhere. And then finally, iterate through this bot management system. And that's it for today's session. Thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate you being here, and look forward to seeing you next time. If you would like to get a more regular dose of this kind of thinking into your inbox weekly, please sign up to my weekly email newsletter, Teaching Robots to Talk. See you next time.